are well today. I am making this live on the day before I was actually born. And I'm making it because it's really important to start to have this conversation now about our earliest influences and what they actually do, how they can impact us in the most profound way to actually remember why we came here. And I'm not going to go through the whole of my story because I could be here forever. But what I wanted to do is just give you 3 or 4 examples so you could actually see how the challenges that you experienced earliest in your life, before you're even born, are there by design to unlock the gifts that you are here to share with this world, and also to activate your memory of your soul blueprint. So if you're new to what all of this means, I am Rosie Glow, Channel of Divine Grace. I'm here to activate high frequency souls that I call StarSeeds, to be able to remember where they came and to have the most impact in this world with their mission. And that's what the soul blueprint is. It's our self-chosen soul mission. Just trying to have a look at where the camera is here. I think it's down there maybe? Anyway, I'm going to look to you, you can look away, whatever is necessary. Ultimately, having spent a lot of time with a very good heart intention in my adult life, I've realised that there is a difference between being heart-led, where we can still truly be influenced by our pain stories that we haven't cleared yet, and being soul-led, when we really truly surrender control to our soul and the gifts that this actually offers us. So I've been an early years and early influences expert. I call myself an expert because I've spent many years delving into this and having many experiences that I have both self-experienced and been trained in. But my earliest experience was of being rebirthed when I was 14 years old. So from 30 years ago, this journey began. So I'll be 44 tomorrow. And at this stage in our evolution, at this stage in humanity's evolution, those of us who are starseeds are high frequency souls that have come to a low density environment, planet, in order to help the ascension of the planet and humanity, in order to progress the intended timeline. And this planet has chosen to align with the Paradise Earth timeline. In our universe, the light has already won. And this was a message that I got back on the 31st of October 2020. And I was asked by what I now understand to be the Galactic Federation of Love Light, the Star Peace codes that come through the Galactic Federation of Love Light, particularly through my galaxy, Rosie Glow, which brings these messages through the power of revelation, through divine grace, to share this message with the world. And I specifically work with these early influences with my clients in order to be able to activate their soul blueprint and look at the very things that seem like they are thwarting them, the very experiences that seem like they're limiting them, and to see the gifts in these experiences, in how in fact they have occurred, in order for us to truly remember how to evolve from creating from our pain bodies and actually to create from our soul, which I also call our higher self. So I'm going to tell you a little story. Please do get comfortable, sit back, resonate, and allow yourself to ponder how your earliest experiences may be affecting you. And I know for many of us, we don't have the details, we haven't been given the details, but in terms of you decoding your earliest influences, this will be down to what you've been told about your parents before you even came into the world, what you've been told about your conception, what you've been told about your time in the womb, what you were told about your birth, your earliest life. It's often things that have just been said in passing that don't seem like they're that important. But for example, do you know whether you were wanted, or were you told you were an accident or a happy surprise? You know, whatever words have been used have influenced you, me, all of us, in terms of whether we feel we are worthy of having things come easily to us, whether life is threatening, whether life is here to support us. And at this stage in humanity's evolution, certainly in the last 4 generations, and I reckon we could go back a lot longer than that, we have all been wired to survive rather than thrive. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress that has been passed from one generation to the next. And at this stage in our consciousness and our evolution, we do have the tools to address this. We never have before, as far as I know, in our written history. But we do have the tools now to be able to overcome this inherited legacy of intergenerational trauma, it's called, and to actually evolve beyond it so we can be the version of ourselves that we've come here to be. And before I go into the story, I'm going to be very interested to hear from you if you would like to know more about decoding your own early influences. I already have a retreat set up for September for what I would call the change makers, those who are already on a path to bringing something into this world to affect positive change. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a new training program, maybe it's a script for a TV show or a movie, maybe it's an album, you know, it could be anything, but you've already created it. There's already a movement, there's already something that you've put out into this world, and you're now being called to activate your soul consciousness so that you're being led by that higher self principle rather than being led by your heart, but still operating from the wounding that I'm going to be talking about in a moment. So if you would like to know more about that, please drop a little comment in the comments, and also head over to rosannahannes.com or starpeaceconsciousness.com and fill out the your box for wanting to communicate with us, and I'll be very happy to have a conversation with you about it. For those of you who don't feel that you fit in that actual genre, that's not you, but you're really interested in the early influences and how they impact you and how you can overcome them, then I will also be looking to offer a series of workshops online to support those who would like to take this deeper journey and to, it's a bit like Star Wars, it's going backwards. You know how we had the original trilogy and then the next trilogy was about going backwards to understand how we got to this story in the first place. This is what we're doing. Part of the issue that's going on in this world today is that we just do not have long enough sight. We don't look far enough into the future, and we don't look far enough into the past to see where these patterns originate from and how to deal with the root cause, rather than to keep trying to deal with the symptom, never ever being able to really truly affect change on an unprecedented scale that will have a positive impact on our planet and all of humanity. My mission is to support people to wire themselves up for thriving rather than surviving. Bear in mind, we've all been wired up to survive, and to support the next generation of parents to be wired up to create a beautiful being that is wired to thrive rather than survive, in the preparation to bringing children into this world, rather than, you know, hoping for the best and not bringing the consciousness in that we truly deserve to have as we bring the next generation in. So if you're liking the sound of all of this, please do hit that subscribe button and do hit the notifications button if you're on YouTube. And if you're joining me seeing this on one of the other platforms, then you can obviously join Star Peace, Seeding the New Earth narrative, because we're creating a new reality by shifting our mindset, by reframing what's going on, and that's what these early influences are about. And, you know, I'm just inviting you to join our community. So you can head over to rosieglow.com if you are interested in our group coaching programs and our multidimensional yoga, which I teach online. Or you can head over to rosannahannes.com if you're more interested in the one-to-one work or the bespoke retreats, and you are essentially a creator, a change maker, bringing this energy into this world today and seeking to be soul-led. Everything will be in the chat box below when I'm done. All right, so on this day, 44 years ago, my mother was waiting for me to come, and I'd been very much a longed-for baby, and I was due on the 8th of August, so the start of the Lion's Gate, but I was actually born on the 12th, the end of the Lion's Gate, so I was definitely meant to come in at this time. And boy, has it taken me a while to realise why. But on this day, my mum, in her efforts to bring me into this world, had loads of energy. She had a surge of energy, adrenaline, prior to things slowing down to get ready for the labour to start. And she walked up Whittenham Clumps, which this is in South Oxfordshire, huge hill, walked up to the top and had the energy to do it, took the bird's eye view, and then came back down, and slowly, the next day, things started. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you about is the story around my conception, because what I do know is that I was very longed for, and my parents had been trying to conceive, and my goodness, if you use that term, please get rid of it now, and you'll know why in a moment, for 2 years. They'd been married for 6, I believe. They got married very young. They had a, deep love for each other, but truth is, both pretty emotionally immature. So there was lots of arguing, lots of laughter, lots of, you know, big emotions a lot of the time. And they had basically spent 2 years trying to make me. And they were at the point that they were like, we may need some help with this. So they made an appointment with the doctor. And when they went to see the doctor did his first test, and he said, well, Mr. and Mrs. Betsos, I'm delighted to let you know that you are indeed pregnant. So the first story is, I can feel my mum around as I say this, there's this thing that's run through my life again and again and again, and it goes through my birth story too, that they had to give up, they had to feel like they needed to give up before what they wanted could actually come. And I've written this down so that I can make sense of it for you, because there's a difference between giving up and surrendering. And the theme of surrender is huge, because this is the difference between being governed by your ego programming, where you try and control everything in order to feel safe, and when you actually, surrender to the highest good of all, to the best outcome for all, and you allow yourself to truly have a deep desire, but you let go of attachment to it. So at this point, them trying on their own had led them to seek some support. Now, whether you see the doctor as God, whether you see the doctor as anything other than someone to reach to for support, they made that journey. They decided to do that, and then discovered what they wanted, they already had. So the way I wrote it is, my parents had to let go of trying, they had to surrender and ask for help before they could accept and allow me to be. I was already in existence, they just needed to allow me to be and not try and force me. Now, how much in your life have you tried to force things? I've been very willful all of my life. Most of my life I was ego-led. And in fact, I never took no for an answer, not even from my parents. So forcing my will was a huge element, and I learned that from both of my parents. The element of surrender was seen as failure. It was seen as giving up. So it was a huge thing for them to actually go and to request support. And this is true for all of us, wherever we are on our journey. My journey changed. I stopped recreating the past when I sought help from those who had what I wanted, who had the expertise or had already gained the experience in the areas that I wanted, whether it was a sacred union, whether it was to be able to shift my relationship with wealth and resource, whether it was to get really, really clear on the most joyful, graceful and easy way of sharing my gifts with this world. I had to look to someone to support me, a guide. Now the paradox here is in the fact that our internal authority is something we all need to trust, right? But we're not meant to do things on our own. None of us are here. The path of separation is the path of the ego. The path of union is the path of divine source unification with us. That means we co-create with the divine. We co-create with our higher self. We allow ourselves to have desires, but then we surrender them, as I said before, to what is for the very best. So there's lots of little paradoxes that play out, and it's all in how we understand things as to whether a doorway opens or it seems like the doorway is shut. So that earliest influence for me was in being welcomed, wanted, desired, longed for, aligned with. So at this point, my parents were willing to do whatever it would take to help bring me into this world. And in that surrender to doing whatever it takes, rather than trying to do the same thing again and again, expecting a different result, they discovered that what they wanted was already there, and they were able to expand into that. Now, adrenaline addiction versus oxytocin addiction. So adrenaline is the stress hormone, and there are lots of other stress hormones. It's also the hormone of excitement. And then you have oxytocin, which basically governs the parasympathetic nervous system. That fuel allows us to create through joy, through play, through being relaxed. Adrenaline is what gets us to create in this world through struggle, through stress, through a lack mindset where we really do feel on our own. And I was exposed to a lot of adrenaline in the womb. And I was exposed to this adrenaline mainly through sugar and sugar spikes, because my mum was eating for two and loved eating all the sugar she possibly could. So I was getting lots of regular little excitement bursts in the womb. And basically, somewhere in my journey, I decided that I wasn't sure I wanted to come out into this world. I knew I was really longed for. I knew I was really wanted. I grew in what felt like a womb of light when I've gone back to feel into it. But I ended up as a breech presentation. And that's bum first, arms and legs out like that, okay? What we didn't know is that the cord was around my neck twice. Now, why did I decide to turn around and stay in the womb, want to stay close to mummy? Very often, this is the case when a child is truly very, very longed for, that the soul of the child seeks to stay close to the heart of the mother and be in that space. And actually, what we're required to do is turn around and exit into the world. And this again will be very much determined by our own mothers and fathers' relationship with the world, whether the world feels safe for a child to be born into, also with their relationship with pain, with the process of birth, because very often, I think it's something like 80% of women are fearful of giving birth. Hello. When you actually deconstruct that, there's a lot of men who are welcomed into the birthing room that are actually terrified of being in the birthing room, and so their adrenaline levels are huge and they influence the labour. Now, the impact of obstetricians and midwives who haven't processed trauma that has come about as a result of babies having potentially died in their care. There's all sorts of reasons why adrenaline can be very potent in a birthing room, but it's certainly something we want to calm right down. When it comes to my story, it was the fashion at the time for breech babies to be delivered vaginally. So what that actually meant though was being on a bed, being hooked up, being monitored, and the birth being obstetrician led rather than midwife led. And my mum was adamant she wanted to have a natural birth. She'd been to Lamaze classes, she prepped herself as she thought best. But as the labour actually started, and by the way, she was escorted by the police to the hospital because she got into labour, she knew she had to go, Dad was away, so she was speeding as she was driving. You imagine the adrenaline again, like spiking as we're getting ready to go there. And the police pulled her over, so what looked like she was in trouble then became her being supported. And again, this is another theme of where we are scared and where we have the opportunity to find the sacredness in that scared. So scared is sacred, scramble. So what seemed threatening then became support, because they basically escorted her to the hospital, got her into the hospital, and then she was basically having all her checks and put on a bed. And after not so very long, she decides her natural birth is going out the window because she's in a lot of pain, and she decides to have the epidural. Now, in my going back to my birth experiences and witnessing the experience of the epidural from the baby's perspective, I went from being in a womb of light and love to what felt like the curtains had been pulled down, totally shut off, couldn't feel connected to my mum, couldn't hear her voice, couldn't feel connected to anything. I felt numb, weird, strange. In my memory as a baby, I was screaming out for my mum, but no one could hear me. So my experience of the epidural, and many of us, I had an epidural with my daughter for a few hours, and I think it's just so important for us to understand that I am not saying here the only good birth is a birth that is a natural birth. You can bring consciousness into every type of birth, and that's what's important, is maintaining the connection. But I digress. The experience for me was from being so well supported, so wanted, so longed for, to suddenly feeling completely separate, completely cut off from everyone and everything, and this was terrifying. So with epidurals, the sort of numbing effect that they have affects the baby and the mother, and it interrupts the hormonal connection between the mother and baby. Synthetic oxytocin does not work the same way as natural oxytocin. Natural oxytocin helps basically endorphins to kick in, which are way more powerful. I think it's 10 times more powerful than morphine. Might be 3 times, don't quote me on that, but it's a lot more powerful than morphine. But if we don't have the natural connection to our hormones, the synthetic ones do not work in the same way. They make the womb contract, but without the pain relief that comes from the endorphins. So it's really challenging for the mother, and that's why epidurals exist, to support us when we don't feel we can actually manage with what's going on. What happened for me in that moment was I took the belief that it wasn't safe to trust others. It wasn't safe to trust I'd be well supported, because at any moment this could happen. So I had to become self-reliant. I had to just rely on myself. I had to never fully allow myself to trust I'm safe, either in someone's arms or in the world. Now consider how that plays out in relationship dynamics, and also consider how that plays out in terms of our relationship with the divine. Because we're never alone, right? I felt alone in that moment. My mother did not know at that time how to say, don't worry baby, I'm here with you, all is okay, I can't feel things the way I used to, a few moments ago, but I'm here for you, I love you, I'm breathing with you, I'm singing to you, everything's going to be fine, blah, blah, blah. None of that, right? So basically I made a decision in the womb that it wasn't safe to trust others and that I had to be self-reliant, because at any point I could have this horrible, scary feeling come up again that I'm all on my own and no one is there for me. And if we relate this again to our soul blueprint activation, this is the theme that's come up again and again and again for me, to remember that I'm not on my own, that I don't need to do things on my own, that I can ask for help, and that help that I ask for will be given. It might not be given the way I expect it or from those that I expect it to come from, but it will be given. Ask and it is given, always. Now we'll move on. So we move on to the point that the cervix is fully dilated and my mum is ready to push me out. So she's being directed to push me out because she's had an epidural. And because I'm a rare type of birth, there are 12 student doctors in the room, and they're all basically encouraging me to be born, but what I'm hearing is loads of shouting. It's scary, right? What was actually excitement and support was actually experienced by me as a threat, as something fearful. And as I was trying to get out of the room with the cord around my neck twice, every time I tried to go out, I was suffocating. It felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, which has been a theme many times in my life, right? Now the only way out is through, but when there is no through route, what do? I couldn't stay in and I couldn't get out. And I again had to surrender. I actually had to surrender to feeling like I was going to die. That actually I just had to let go and let God. And the way that God showed up in my world, the source of all, was through the doctor that actually did give my mum an episiotomy. And in giving me that episiotomy, giving my mum that episiotomy, was able to get me out before I did suffocate, pull the cord off my neck, and here I am in this world today. But that actual experience again said to me, and the belief that I took from that experience was I did not deserve life to be easy, because I needed help to be born. So you see this kind of building on beliefs that occurs here, because from the epidural, I didn't want anyone to help me because I was scared that I'd become reliant on help and I wouldn't be able to trust I would be helped, so I had to do everything on my own. And then the paradox of the birth was the only way I could really be born was to actually be helped to be born. And the message that came through from this actual belief and this early experience was that I thought, as I said, I didn't deserve to have things come easy to me. So everything has to be a struggle, and I have to get to the point of giving up before I can have a breakthrough. And then the healing belief that came through from this is that no one is ever meant to do anything on their own. You can struggle to, or you can ask for that support, you can ask for that help, you can ask for that guidance. Now imagine if my parents had been primed to let me know that in the womb. What would have happened, right? They didn't know that. I had to learn it through my experience, but that is what triggered my soul blueprint, which is all about teaching people to truly desire, own their desires, want to share those desires with the world, want to actualize them, but at the same time to surrender them to their higher self and to come from their higher self, so their oxytocin fuel rather than adrenaline fuel in their co-creation. This takes me to the last point I'm going to make. I had no idea I was going to end up in birth work myself, okay? It was actually I had a deep longing to be a mother myself from the age of 8, and what ended up happening was I had my daughter, but I had a very long labour, a 4-day labour, and I'm not going to go into that, that's a whole other story. But what it did was it triggered in me the desire to learn more about birth and how to prevent long labours like that, because I was terrified. I was pushing the contractions away. No one had got my head or my body around pain, even though I'd paid through the roof for all the support that I thought I needed. And this spurred a career basically as a perinatal yoga teacher and trainer, starting from fertility all the way through to the first 3 years of life. And from my lower self, from my pain body, from my ego programming, what I was trying to do was to take people's pain away, to minimize people's pain, so they didn't have to go through what I went through. As I learned to connect to my soul consciousness and then how to evolve this, which is how Rosy Glow was created as a business after Enjoy Yoga, and this again came through communion with my soul, where I was told, you're not here to take people's pain away. You're here to help people manage pain, not fear pain, move through pain, and minimize unnecessary pain. And the minimizing comes from surrendering control to our soul, rather than trying to do everything from our limited mindset and limited belief system, which is the ego programming. The ego, as I talk about it, is about our conditioning, my friends. It's not the big I am, as others talk about it. It is how we've been conditioned to survive in this world, to be in this world in order to survive. So, these key early beliefs basically took me on a journey that included a career that ultimately I was doing something great in this world. I was educating parents to be, I was preparing them before they even conceived their babies, I was at their births, I was helping them to postnatally recover. But guess who was run ragged? Guess who never had enough time, money, love? Guess who, whatever it was still stuck in a loop of must do better, this isn't enough, I need more, lack consciousness. Because I was operating from my pain body. I hadn't healed. I was healing in part through the process, but I was not coming from my soul consciousness. I hadn't surrendered to the highest good. I hadn't allowed myself to believe that I could be supported and things could be easy for me, and that actually what I was doing was worthy of being supported. So I was creating a paradigm around me that was self-fulfilling according to these earliest beliefs. And here's the funniest thing. It dawned on me on my most recent upgrade and revisit of my earliest beliefs that I created a whole career in the pregnancy and birth world with the intention of having prevented the actual birth outcome that I experienced. This was my lower self intention, not my higher self. There was this sense that if I'd learned every trick in the book of how I could actually help women with complex baby positionings and, where the twins breach, cords, transverse, that I could actually help those babies to come into this world with minimum intervention. That's a higher self calling, a desire, right? Why not minimize suffering? But on the lower end, what was going on there was the fact that there was a part of me that felt, if I knew all of this stuff before I even came into the world, if my parents knew it, then maybe I would have been born differently. And the absolute pinnacle of my kind of shift in that was recognizing that with even everything I had learned in 22 years, the likelihood of me having survived, having come out alive without that episiotomy, without a cesarean if I'd needed a cesarean, without that doctor's hands-on support, very unlikely, incredibly unlikely. So facing the fact that actually things worked out just perfectly, even though they were incredibly challenging. One, to reveal to me the struggle patterns that were in the ancestry of my bloodlines, that were in the humans that I'd chosen to be born to, because I came to evolve the consciousness of my bloodline and of humanity, the bloodlines I'd chosen. I also had connected with them in order to actually receive the triggers that would allow me to remember why I've come to this world. And that is to teach co-creating from our higher selves, surrendering the will of the ego to the higher self, to the soul, surrendering control to the soul, and shifting the fuel that runs us from adrenaline to oxytocin so we can create more joyfully, more easily, So we can stop butting against things, fighting for change, and actually come from a centered space where we are radiating the frequencies out that allow the shifts to happen in those around us, so that we can co-create something different. We can co-create the Thrive paradigm rather than co-create from struggle. So since Enjoy Yoga came to completion, then Rosie Glow was born, and Rosie Glow was my entry into the world of coaching and co-creating, reality crafting and soul consciousness. I had no idea when Rosie Glow entered into my consciousness as the name of my business. It was also the name of my galaxy and my soul name. That came later, right? And I also didn't know quite what it really meant, which was that I'm a channel of divine grace, which is the power of revelation. So, the power of revelation that allows us to let go easily of what no longer serves us, so that we can truly make the most of the gifts that are available to us. This is actually choosing the easiest path you possibly can to co-create your soul destiny, to co-create what you have come into this world to co-create, rather than the hardest path. So if you've got a choice between the hardest path, which will affect change in the world, but the impact is going to be limited, and choosing the easiest path, which still is going to involve elements of challenge where you're going to need adrenaline, but it means you can have the most stratospheric impact in this world with your gifts, with your soul mission, what one would you choose? Which one of those would you prefer? Well, most of us will say, oh, I'll choose the easy path, but our conditioning is wired to the challenging path, right? And we will argue for it. You don't know how many people I've spoken to that argue for the fact that this is just the way it is. I'm like, it is that way until we go back, look at our earliest influences, the precognitive beliefs that we have embodied as a result of those experiences, and we actually choose to look at them again from a higher perspective, choose to reframe them, so that every time we encounter some kind of challenge or resistance in the world in front of us, instead of going at it from that struggle mindset, we step back and we go, oh yeah, I'm here to align with the highest good of all, the win-win-win. Okay, what is my personal story? What is it I need to remember that I forget every time I'm facing a new challenge? Okay, let me embody that. And let me also consciously shift my fuel from adrenaline to oxytocin until that embeds as my dominant fuel. And that's why I'm here, my friends. This is why we're having this conversation, because I know that in decoding your earliest influences, and this is something I take people through, you're able then to really activate your soul blueprint, which is your self-chosen your self-chosen path on this earth, what you have chosen to come here and be challenged by, in order to remember you're already a master of it, and then to teach it and to share your gifts with this world. No one has chosen for us. We've chosen for ourselves. When we say thy will be done, we're saying higher self, soul consciousness, the bit of me connected to the divine. Thy will be done. Show me how to do this the best possible way. But we absolutely have to let go of this idea that we are separate, that we're on our own, that life is a struggle and it's the only way it can be, and that we're here to fight, to struggle in order to achieve something. That's the old way. Do you want to join me in the new one? Because if you do, you're what I call a Paradise Earth pioneer, and you may be an architect, a builder, or an energizer of the Paradise Earth, and therefore a connection to the star peace codes. I'm here to meet you. You're here to meet me. Let's connect. And if you'd like to know more, one, about online workshops, or two, about the retreat in September, as I said, please do get in touch with me, because in the retreat, we're going to take a month, basically, where initially, and this is why it starts early September, because we'll be meeting in physical during the equinox weekend in West Sussex. But essentially, I spend time with you one-on-one online, decoding your earliest influences. There's a whole load of stuff I take you through. It doesn't matter what you do and what you don't know, whether you can still access information or not. It's about what you feel inside. Then we get to those core beliefs. We look at what your big idea is that you've already put into this world, and how you can actually shift your beliefs to help this become an easier actualization and amplification. And then when we come together for the physical time, that's when we're energizing each other's intentions in this world by witnessing them, joining together. There's a maximum of 5 spaces. That could be 5 couples or 5 individuals. And we are adjoining pieces of the puzzle, the Paradise Earth puzzle. So we're being called on a soul level to come together in order to be able to meet each other and support each other, be the scaffolding to each other's co-creation, if you like, in this world. And it's always about who you know, right, and who they're connected to and who they're connected to, in how we create an easy path ahead rather than a challenging one. You'll also be receiving all the activations and initiations for clearing as much of the density in your energy field and cellular memory as possible in one go, so you can receive your soul love light as much as possible to be able to amplify and illuminate your path ahead and draw to you those who are part of the support network of your co-creation. And then what we do afterwards is we come together and we energize our collective co-creative vision and clear up resistance through a process called reality crafting that I will teach you. And we also then talk about what happens next, because I take people through a very deep clearing of many layers, all layers of the cultural, societal, religious, familial, socioeconomic conditioning that tends to affect all of us on a subliminal level, wherever we've been put in this world. So that's the next steps after, for those who haven't done that work with me yet. But ultimately, it's about coming together and spending time fully fueled by oxytocin, so we can embed that in the 2 nights, 3 days, anchor it, so you can step into your world once you've left the space with me, and keep coming back to this and feeding yourself with oxytocin rather than adrenaline, see just how the world changes. Those of you who are loving the sound of the retreat, let me know. Remember how to get in touch. Head over to rosannahannis.com, fill out the contact form, and you can also do that through starpeaceconsciousness.com. And I invite all of you to check out Starpeace, because that's my movement. That is what I have birthed into this world. It's on a foundational level complete, and now it's time to amplify. This was my biggest vision, if you like, that I've come to birth into this world, which I could not do from an adrenaline fueled response. I can only share it through oxytocin, and that's why this has all come about. For those of you who would like to look at the online options, then look at get in touch with us through starpeaceconsciousness.com or rosieglow.com, and we'll be very happy to have a conversation with you and see how we can bring something together. For those of you who would like to start decoding your earliest influences and reframing what perception you've had of this world before you even knew you created this perception, you've taken this on, challenge it, reframe it, and then see how you can apply it to every challenge in your life. Thank you for sharing with me on this very special, sacred day. I want to honour my mum, honour my dad for bringing me into this world. I feel pretty emotional, full of oxytocin as I share this. So I hope you find it really activating for you in getting you to consider what might be true for you. And I would really look forward to hearing the comments. And if you do make a comment, please put #StarPeace as well. So much love, so much love, so much love.